Hello, I'm Nancy Black. I am a professor and the Vice Dean at Université de Moncton in the Faculty of Engineering. And I'm going to present to you today the presentation that I did a couple of days ago for the Engineering Summit, the Leadership Summit of Engineering in the Faculty of Engineering at Université de Moncton. It's a great pleasure to be with you, and I look forward to talking to you about taking a chance and how it can make all the difference and thereby develop talent. Before I start, I'm going to give you a little bit of background about our Faculty of Engineering here at Université de Moncton. At the undergraduate level, we have three programs, three domains that are of interest: civil, mechanical, and electrical engineering. And those three are the most popular across the country, the most populous, if you will. So we have chosen to do those within our entirely Francophone institution here in Moncton, New Brunswick. At the master's and doctorate levels, we also have programs. These programs are not specialized to one particular area, and in fact, in addition to civil, mechanical, and electrical engineering, we also have industrial engineering abilities to supervise students. So if that is of interest to you, please reach out. Ça serait en français. All of our studies at all of these levels are in French, and this is an opportunity to perfect your French while at the same time perfecting your engineering knowledge. We have over 350 undergraduate students, 41 graduate level students, with about 25 at the at the master's level, 18 at the PhD level. Overall, 24% women. We're aiming for the 30%. One interesting thing is that at the graduate level, we have just about 50% women. So it's at the undergraduate level we're working still to get those numbers up. We're very proud as well of having a large number of students coming from other countries to join us here at Université de Moncton to pursue their engineering studies, 46%. Now, back to the main presentation. I'm going to start off talking a little bit about some points of reference, then resources that you can find, either published books or things online, some inspiration, and finally a case study. And if you will, I'm actually going to start out a little bit with case study points of reference. You may recognize this building and this environment. These are pictures that I have taken in the city of Florence, and this is the Duomo, which is here, and this is the roof, or the ceiling instead, of the Bâtisse, which is just next to the Duomo. Quite the extraordinary buildings. And initially, actually, I was going to write my title over top of this slide, but there's just so much to see there as it is. What I wanted to point out, though, with this environment is really about the dome itself. It was started in the, actually completed in the 1400s, and they weren't quite sure what to do. They'd already built the cathedral itself, but it didn't have a dome on top, and they weren't quite sure how to get one up there. And they had a competition to determine how best to do this. The person that actually won the competition had nothing to do with engineering or architecture. This was a goldsmith and a sculptor, and he came out with what remains the largest brick roof of any building, the largest brick dome, I should say, of any building in the world. Very extraordinary, the design of it, and there are some secrets that remain. So thinking outside the box, taking a chance, making a huge difference. I'll also be talking a little bit about who I am and how I got to where I am. What I want you to see in this slide here are three different categories. We have everything that has a black arrow. Those black arrows are things that are absolutely normal. This is the way one would normally go. And so there are a few of those. And then there are quite a number of pink arrows. The pink arrows are things where I just took a chance. I did something different, and it led to other things. And then there are other ones, blue arrows, which indicate where one took a chance, and having taken the chance, it leads to something else that is pretty normal. But again, there was chance associated with getting that far. As engineering people, we at the undergraduate level aim to give you 12 graduate attributes. And 2 of these are specifically related to leadership development and the ability to lead other people. The 6th one in the series, individual and teamwork, is something that points out that you must be able to work on your own, but also as part of a team, and that within that team, you should be able to do so in a multidisciplinary setting. So not just with people who are like you, but with people who have differing gifts. And it is that ensemble of gifts that make the team something special. We'll get back to that. As well, equity and ethics, or ethics and equity, EE, if you will. That's about having accountability no matter what you do. So the person that created that dome, he had to be sure that it was going to work. And the equity aspect is about making sure that everyone has equal access to accessing their abilities to make a positive difference. But we've already talked now a bit about what a team is and why a team is important. So I'm just going to go into that a little bit more. Any of you who have played on team sports, you'd know that within a team, whether it be a hockey team or a soccer team, you've got different roles. So there are 2 people here in yellow in the soccer team. Those people are your goalies, and then there are a whole bunch of people in white and a few people in blue. So the blue tend to be people who are support people, the trainers, the physiotherapists, people that are going to help you as players do what you need to do. But all of the rest of you, well, you're all white, so it must be the same thing, right? Only that's not right. You've got your centers, your defenders, your strikers, your forwards, your sides. You've got all these different roles. And each person contributes to making sure that the team wins. And indeed, one of the interesting things about soccer or a hockey team is that you need to have everyone as part of that winning effort. And the weakest person on your team is going to be the person that makes a difference as to whether you will win the cup, the Stanley Cup, whatever it is, or not. Some sports are much more individualistic. Like basketball, if you've got one of these superstars, then they can carry the team forward and make an incredible difference. But with a sport like soccer particularly, it's all about everyone. And in fact, it's your weakest players which will make the difference, as opposed to whether you are going to create a team that wins or not. So that's in sports. But of course, we have teams as well in work environments. And we've been talking a lot about them recently with the COVID crisis. And so in the medical world, we need to have our doctors as well as our nurses. And we now know that it's important to not just depend on doctors. We don't have enough doctors. And nurses can do a lot more than we allow them to do in many cases. And there can be a good complementary synergy through those 2. But that's not enough either. We've also come to discover that pharmacists can do a whole lot more than we tend to or have traditionally given them access to in terms of controlling and ensuring our good health as Canadians in this case. And that's not enough either, because if the concierge, if the cleaner is not there to ensure that the equipment is safe and ready to be used by the specialists, it's all going to fall apart. So we need all of those different roles, and I'm sure many others that I haven't even talked about, in order to make our healthcare system work. That's the team. And finally, within engineering, even if you're all going for the same project, you're all going to have a little bit of a different perspective, and it's bringing those different perspectives in that makes the whole better. If you will, we've got our A's, our B's, and our C's, 3 separate people, and if we bring them all together and they remain A plus B plus C, that's okay, it's good. But if we bring them together as a team and they complement and they create synergy amongst themselves, then you've got your ABC as a product, which is greater than the sum of those individuals. That's the power that you can have as part of the leadership effort. It's also important to realize that the way a team works is not something that is stable over time. Indeed, when you come together with a number of different people, and each of you with your different groups, you will be in the forming stage of the team. And that means that you have pretty decent abilities. But when you try to work together, if you ignore the fact that you have different gifts, different complements, then you're actually going to go into a lower state of ability, a lower state of accomplishment. That's the storming stage. But it's by going through that negative period that then you are able to create a synergy, a normalization, which you will notice is in fact higher in terms of efficiency than the forming stage. So you've gone through a negative stage into a more positive stage, and having come there, then you were able to grow that even further. Now don't get upset about the fact that at the end here it goes right down. In this particular case suggested by Daniel Dupuis at Université Laval, he's pointing out this is the typical, in a course where you have a project, we force you to come together, it sort of is difficult, then you get to the point where you're creating your product and you present it and then you disperse. And so that's your adjourning stage. Any one of us can be a leader. Every one of us has the abilities. What you need is 3 different things. You need to have an idea of the vision. You need to know where you're going, why you want to be there. Then you need the inspiration, ideas, creativity, thinking outside the box. And finally, you need to move, momentum. It's that combination of things that make a leader. And you'll notice that this equation, in fact, has been suggested again by Daniel Dupuis, but it actually comes from philosophical type books. So engineering isn't living in a vacuum. It is complemented by this holistic, synergistic ability to see the world. V times I times M. So that's my introduction, point de repère, points of reference. Now we're going to talk a little bit about some of the publications that I have come across over the years, which have been inspirational to me. The first one was published over 25 years ago, and the idea, or the title, Me to We, was created by Craig and his brother Mark Kielberger. These 2 young men were, well, particularly Craig at the time as a 12-year-old, realized that we were doing terrible things, forcing young children to work in certain parts of the world. And he said to his mother, that doesn't seem fair to me. And his mother said, you're absolutely right. So what? And he got off his butt. He did the movement and went, indeed, they went to India, and they saw some of these locations where children were working. And that inspired him and his brother Mark to start up an organization where, rather than thinking of the individual, you're looking at the ensemble, creating something greater. It's a philosophy that they created. Now, in recent years, that organization has fallen into some sort of disrepute, but the theory there is absolutely right. The second book I wanted to mention to you is Lean In by Sheryl Sandberg, who was COO of Facebook, which has now evolved to Meta, with her co-author Nell Scoville. It was published in 2013, so several years ago now, but what she was talking about in Lean In was particularly about, well, about women, but it can be about any one of us, where we tend to sit back and let things happen around us. And, you know, we can contribute. She suggests that's not enough. You got to lean in, be active, create, do it. And then Christina Cook, I came across her book last year and written during the pandemic, and it talks about good burdens, the good things that come out of hard work. So a little bit more about those last 2 books. Again, Lean In, a book particularly for the 50% of the world that is women, and all of the profits that come from that book are pumped back into an initiative called leanin.org, on which everything is free, and the idea is to help women to achieve their ambitions and work to create an equal world then pour l'ensemble, for everyone, taking advantage of what we all have to offer. Good Burdens, I mentioned just earlier, it's about how you work a lot and the things that you can be most proud of, the things that require the most are in fact things that are very, very worthwhile to give back. So it's an alignment of our energies, and that helps create projects, and the projects create joy. So the idea of taking a burden and from that creating joy. It's not just about the things, though, that were published 25 or 10 years ago. There's lots that is available in different environments now online. And my children remind me about the Yes Theory initiative, or the Seek Discomfort. And again, in that way, it's about moving outside your comfort zone to find something that moves us ahead. Seek something different. Seek go beyond. Or, as Sheryl Sandberg talks about in her book, from a poster that she said she found in when she was working at Facebook, what would you do if you were not afraid? What does that say to you? And then, if you know what that would be, do it. Very inspirational, in my opinion. Sheryl also talks about a number of ways of thinking about what leadership is, and I particularly like this one. The fact that it focuses on others. So it's about making others better because you were there, your presence, and making sure that that presence, that impact that you had, lasts after you are no longer there. So it's all about that interaction. It's about the creating the synergy, making something bigger, better. Or, in the words of a colleague and friend of mine from my undergraduate days, imagine success. From that imagination, create your vision, and then work from that vision to achieve it. Also, be honest about what you have to offer. What makes you feel passionate? What makes you feel joy? Give that. That'll give back to you, and then we'll be better. Also, beware of biases. This is a topic which is increasingly talked about these days, unconscious biases. The fact that even without being aware, I may act in a way that is detrimental to other people because of my preconceptions. So by being aware of my preconceptions, then I can compensate for that and help you create what you are capable of. So, yeah, and that can be self-bias. It can be, I can't do this because I am such and such. Throw that out the window. Hold on to just your joy and your vision and your momentum. And with all of these things, also always beware of the gap. There is a gap between what you'd really like and where you currently are. I think of this in terms of the UK's metro or underground, where you hear the announcements, mind the gap. And in other words, don't fall into that trap where you'll just stop everything. Move beyond it. Know that we've come to a certain point. Where you want to be is here. There is a gap. Think about what you've done here already, all the positive things you've already come through. And keep aiming, but be careful not to fall in. Fundamental to this is knowing when and how to say both no and yes. I had a hard time learning to say no. I was too ready in some cases to say, yeah, sure, I'll do that, I'll do that, I'll do that. And then you can find yourself with too little energy for the things that are going to give back the most, that give you the most passion. So I have learned over time, by exploring those things that are not the things that I feel the most passion for, how to say no, and to save that energy that I'm now saying no to for the things that I can really make a positive difference for, the yeses. So let's get back a little bit more to leadership and to mentorship. Mentorship is fundamental to leadership, and if you will, that is the guidance of someone who is going to help a mentee to be better, to be more developed. It can be in a company, an educational institution, but it's also, although this definition from Google and from Oxford Languages suggests it's a one-way street, that's not true. It's actually, in the best situations, a two-way street. You've got your mentor, you've got your mentee. The mentee says, oh, will you help me? The mentor says, all right, I'll do that. But as they are helping, the mentee gives back as well to the mentor. There is that reflection that can be really useful. LinkedIn talks about this, or sorry, LeadIn talks about this as well, and they suggest a few things to make sure that your mentorship is going to work well. You need to know when to ask, how much to ask, your energy. You need to listen and hear the feedback which is being offered. And finally, you need to personalize what you are offering to ensure that it is appropriate for the person that you are acting and interacting with. So consider timing. Do it when there is the energy in order to implement, in order to reflect, not in the really, really busy times. Do it at a time when there's a little bit of space in your energies. Ensure you don't overwhelm the person, that they are able to do what you require them to do. Embrace the feedback and work from it and assimilate it in what you're going to do. And as I've already mentioned, make sure it's relevant to the person you're working with. And indeed, just as Christine Cook pointed out, and Sheryl Sandberg as well, jobs will demand sacrifice. But you don't want to ask for more, or you don't want to give more than what is absolutely necessary. So avoid unnecessary sacrifice. And if you will, a way to put this that I've heard some speakers who have spoken at Association of Canadian Ergonomists gatherings from Maple Leaf, work smarter, not harder. Also very, very common statement within industrial engineering. What you want to do is arrive at what you need, but not necessarily do it burning yourself out. That makes no sense. Christina Cook, again, in her book, and I noticed that I misspelled her name here, sorry about that. We've got the burden, which is on the vertical axis over time. At the very beginning of a project, it's going to take a lot of attention and effort. And when you increase your burden to meet those requirements, you're doing so in the best environment with service for good. And that allows you to then go into this area where the burden becomes less and the joy becomes more. So that's what you want to get to. It's that burden idea, which is not something which comes easily, if you will. We want to avoid the tyranny of convenience. It's so easy to pull out one's smartphone and go at it and not do anything that's really moving the world forward. That is not what we want to do in terms of our leadership. We want to lead into the vision, into the inspiration, and moving outward and forward. Or if you will, not just be about efficiency direct on, but looking at the larger picture, because it's going beyond that you find those special energies, or what I hope to write someday, in praise of inefficiency. That's where the real goals can make a huge difference. This slide comes from a colleague in engineering at University of Waterloo, Dr. Carolyn McGregor. And she talks about the way, she and her co-authors talk about the way in which working in teams can be problematic. And I'm sure that you have encountered times when the team doesn't work very well. All 4 of these quadrants on this figure are problematic. It can be that you are a strong student or a strong participant. You are an extraordinary person. Great. Or you're relatively weak. Either one of those can be problematic if they are combined with other extremes. If you are strong and you work individually, you can ignore all the other people and their gifts that are available to your team. And as a result, you create a hackathon and they let you do it. Okay? But it's really you that is pushing that. It's never as good as if you have the entire team working toward that goal. If, on the other hand, you are a weak student and you really want to lead the team anyway, at that point you get what Dunning-Kruger calls the perfect storm, because you aren't ignorant and you aren't aware of your ignorance, or you are ignorant, you are not aware of your ignorance, and so you create the perfect storm of a terrible result because other people let you lead in a way that was inappropriate. So we're ignoring the controls and balances that the team fundamentally has available to them. If, on the other hand, we allow ourselves to be led by the team, if you are a strong person and the team says, hey, you're strong, we want you to do it, we'll let you do it, we'll sit back. That's a group imposed with a strong academic, and we are wasting the abilities that the group as a whole have available to them. And the final problematic combination is when the group says, you're not very good, and says, please, just sit in your corner and we'll take care of it. Now, you can do that, but now you're fundamentally creating a challenge, a worsening for the person who started out not being so strong. They don't believe in themselves as well as they could otherwise, and they become in a negative spiral, their self-confidence going down, then their abilities going down because they don't have the confidence to offer and to create what they can do to complement the other people on their team. So what you really want to do in a healthy participation world is to stay in the cross points here in the center. Don't move away on whatever of the 4 axes one can change. Communication is crucial to making sure that this works for everyone. Talking out loud, okay? Letting people be aware of what you are hearing, understanding. By being explicit about that, that can help them change their way of thinking. That changes then the way we behave. And when you change behavior, then you can change the world. You can change entire institutions. Again, from LinkedIn, starting out with an individual voice, taking a chance, telling people what you think could be done better, can create a huge transformation. So getting back to the case study we talked about very, very briefly, my case study. You start out as a little kid, full of joy, full of beans, wonderful stuff, go to school. That's what you have to do, right? That's my black arrow here. Now you can do things within the school environment that are outside the box. And I chose to do some things, including being part of a choir and also being part of drama programs. And that was really neat. And it was through the choir that I was able to be a singing role in West Side Story. And it was wonderful, absolutely terrific. But I didn't actually take advantage of that in the grand scheme of things. I went on to university. I went on to an engineering program, which obviously has led me to become a professional engineer and a professor of engineering eventually, but that's not where I started. I just went through doing my studies within the engineering school. But I met some people who were exchange students, and they were really neat, and they were having a chance to travel and explore in ways that, wow, that sounded pretty good. And so I took a chance, my first pink arrow out of university, and I went to France for a year. I became an international student for the 1 year, then came back and finished my degree. Pretty normal. Well, will it serve something? I don't know, but it was fun. Based on that, though, when I came time to graduate and I was looking for positions, I was offered a job through the Graduate Hire Program at Air Canada, in part because I was now bilingual. So I had the engineering and I had the French. So it allowed me the opening of that door. Mostly, though, when I was at Air Canada, I was working on computers and with computers, making the systems work better. That's okay, but it really wasn't where my passion lied. I really enjoyed the design for humans, ergonomics, human factors. And I started to notice that even within Air Canada, there were things like, how are you going to design the overhead bin within your aircraft to make sure that it's going to work for the people? Whatever size the people are they going to be able to push it up? Are they going to be able to use it the way we expect? Is it going to resist the various forces that need to be held within that? And it was based on that image, that desire, that vision, I thought, I'm going to go back to school. So I took a chance. I took a chance leaving a job which was secure and developing that passion for ergonomics and human factors. And I went to do my master's degree out of Halifax at what is now part of Dalhousie University, but at the time, the Technical University of Nova Scotia. That was good. And I did some side trips out of there that were interesting and amazing as well, but I'm not going to talk about those right now. We're just going to try to be as focused as possible. And based on having a master's degree, then I had the possibility of becoming a professor at Université de Moncton, in part because of my knowledge in ergonomics, which was something that they required, being an engineer and having at least a master's degree, on condition that I do a PhD. So here's my black arrow here to UNB and the Institute of Biomedical Engineering. It was through being a professor and an engineer here that I indeed became part of the Association of Professional Engineers and Geoscientists here in New Brunswick, required. But with that combination, I was able to develop a research project, which is something, again, new. And bits and pieces work together and are complementary, but there's also chance that comes in there. Okay, so that's, you could say it stops there, only it doesn't. Look at all the other things here on the right-hand side, and all of them are associated with pink arrows. We've got things associated with taking a chance to present about family history and bringing my family overseas to explore a Korean connection in my extended family, to take my family and go to Europe for a year, work in France for a year on a sabbatical, to teach within a program in Bordeaux. Again, because I have the field of ergonomics, because I am bilingual, so I can do it in French, I can do it in English. They wanted it in English, great, can do it. And also, why just within my particular world? We can do other things that are even more beneficial to the larger world. Becoming involved in the National Association of Canadian Ergonomists, l'Association Canadienne d'Ergonomie. Starting small, becoming president of the National Association. From that as well, choosing to take on the role of scientific co-chair for the programming of the Triennial World Congress in 2021, held by or supported by the Association of Canadian Ergonomists and the International Ergonomics Association. Because I had that role and because I devoted a lot to it, there was an opportunity now to move on and take on a role within the association itself, and I am now part of the executive council of that organization, working with individuals from across the world, helping to make that science that I feel so passionate about more real, supported, and there are a lot of other layers within that. It's just hugely wonderful to me where I am at this time, and yet I'm not going to stop. Who knows what's next? And that's the best part of moving outside, taking a chance, following those pink arrows, and making all the difference. So, what do you love? What do you feel passionate about? And how can that lead to both joy and leadership? If you will, find your niche, something that you love, and then explore, develop, make it yours, make a difference. These are the references I used as I prepared this presentation. Thank you for listening, and thank you for being a part of the story that this 2023 conference at University of Moncton, excusez-moi, held for the Summit of Engineering and Leadership here in Eastern Canada. Have a great day.